we put our radar out there. And some people have leapt to the conclusion that Trump could be the Antichrist, or anybody associated with the Abraham Accords is associated with this Antichrist set of prophetic details. Let the reader understand. Okay, so a covenant. This is important, Mondo. What does that mean? And does the word peace actually enter in here?
Yeah, that's kind of what led me down the road. I've been studying this particular topic of Daniel 9, so it's a long time, but in the sense of doing some extra research on it for the past couple of years, because, and lately, as you mentioned, people say, oh, they're seeing the Abrahamic Accords. There's a, even last year there was an alleged agreement that was being in place with many, many different nations. People were beginning to say, is this Daniel 9? Because there was another comment that was made by Hamas that said they wanted a truce for 7 years. So Christians, when they see this and they see truce, covenant, 7 years, they immediately go to Daniel 9, which I understand. But that then leads to these traditions that get really entrenched. And so all I did is, trying to think of the outside the box, is say, well, is the covenant a covenant of peace? And so let's examine it. And what you'll see, I wrote this article, as you mentioned, and people can find it at prophecywatchers.com/Daniel9. Made it real easy. And I simply just asked the question about that is how do we know? And I kind of deconstructed it. And so as a Berean, Acts 17:11, we're supposed to let the text speak. And as we've been saying, let the reader understand. So when you go back to the text itself, all I simply asked was, does the word peace appear anywhere in that context? And I thought, well, that's interesting, because listen, I've taught this myself for 25 years. This is a peace agreement, because that's what I had learned as a young Christian. And so you kind of go with your traditions. And it's not that there's no reason at all that this is just from completely left field, but I think as we get into the text itself, we'll see that, well, why do we believe that? Because the word peace doesn't appear there.
Very, very interesting. Yes, we have all, and as you see, we do look at the headlines, and we do try to process, critically thinking prophecy, so that we can share with people, and have it be, it's a good witness tool. Prophecy is an amazing witnessing tool, and yet we also want to represent it completely. So if it's not a peace treaty, let's just devil's advocate. I hate that phrase, but
please, I love devil's advocate.
Yeah. Because what covenant could that be? Again, this is a Jewish season. It's not about the church. It's the time of Jacob's trouble. I think we need to think in terms of the Jews and their covenants. What could possibly be in view here as if it's not a peace treaty? What are we talking about?
Yeah. And so when you take the word covenant, so what we do when you do inductive Bible study is you look at the word covenant, and then you say, oh, well, where does this word appear in the book of Daniel? And maybe Daniel used it in other places, and maybe he had maybe a technical meaning for it and another meaning for it. And so when you look and you take the word, you'll see that it appears 7 times in 6 different verses. And all of the other times, this is important, all of the other times outside of Daniel 9:27, it's referring to the Mosaic covenant. It's referring to the covenant that God gave to Israel through Moses, involving 613 commandments, which would include the sacrifices, the temple instructions, everything. And so you're like, wait a minute, this was the covenant in Exodus 19 that got established. And so one of the things that as we've been mentioning, let the reader understand, Jesus and the Holy Spirit was pointing us back to the book of Daniel about the abomination of desolation. And so I thought, it's interesting that not only the Holy Spirit, but Jesus pointed us back to the book of Daniel and said, listen, pay attention about the abomination. Well, the abomination of desolation appears in the book of Daniel, chapter 11, verse 31. And so Jesus is saying, basically, what you saw there in history, this was done by Antiochus Epiphanes in 167 BC. What you see there is going to be the key to the future abomination that the Antichrist will do. And so if you go there and you just study that out, you'll see that, wow, this Antiochus figure was a type of the Antichrist. And what did he do? He attacked the Mosaic covenant in the land of Israel. And so you see over and over, especially in Daniel 11, it talks about him being moved against the Holy Covenant. He raged against the Holy Covenant. He was looking for those who would forsake the covenant. And you're like, well, what covenant is he talking about? It's the Mosaic covenant. And so to me, that really was where the key is by Jesus and the Holy Spirit saying, listen, pay attention here. I gave you the answer. And so when you see what the Antichrist is going to do, he again is the second type of Antiochus. When he comes, he's going to want the temple to be built.
Yeah.
He's going to want them to reestablish the temple. Why? So he can desecrate it, just like Antiochus Epiphanes did. So Jesus is saying, look, it's going to be exactly the same. So that's why it was really hard for me. If you look at every other instance, it refers to the Mosaic covenant. So in Daniel 9:27, and I know Hebrew, so I was able to translate it, and it's not complex, but basically saying that the Antichrist will cause the covenant to prevail for the many, for the Jewish people. He's going to come in, because right now it doesn't. If you go to Israel, the Mosaic covenant is not established because most people are secular. But he's going to cause that Mosaic covenant to be established, and he's going to confirm it in the land so that why? They can rebuild the temple and they can start all their sacrifices because he has a destiny. He's already got it on his brain. I need this built so I can desecrate it, because if you're going to desecrate and blaspheme God, which we know that the Antichrist is a blasphemer, the best place in the world is not only in Jerusalem, but it's on the Temple Mount, inside the temple itself.
Wow. I love this, and I'll tell you why. Because it requires us to walk ourselves back in our thinking to why that temple is even going to be rebuilt. That to me is just a very refreshing way to look at this. And I look at your article and you say, it's also evident looking at the various occurrences that sometimes the word holy is attached and other times it's not. There is no overt explanation for it. But even without the word holy, the clear intended meaning of covenant is the Mosaic covenant in the various instances. And that is fascinating. And also, Mondo, the context of the verse, sacrifice and offering. Again, we don't always think in a Jewish manner, but I think this is one case that we absolutely have to.
Yeah, to me, it's a little bit interesting that if we're just reading the text, like again, when you do hermeneutics or you study the Bible, and again, every week for 20 years, I'm just studying the Bible every day. Every day is my job, right, to teach and preach.
Right.
And you just say, the first thing you do in inductive Bible study is you say, look at the words. Which words? Prepositions, adjectives, nouns. You look at names, places. You just simply, you're not interpreting anything. You're just simply analyzing. And it's interesting there that within 4 or 5 words in distance from the word covenant is sacrifices and offerings. So it's interesting that one half of the verse, we would want to interpret it to mean a peace agreement with the United Nations or something by the Antichrist, and then all of a sudden we talk about sacrifices and offerings. It's clearly temple language. Everything about it is temple language. And in fact, where do all of if I was to ask anybody, a scholar, anybody, which covenant of the Bible gives all of the requirements for the temple and the sacrifice offerings? They're going to say, oh, well, that's the Mosaic covenant. Bingo. It's the Mosaic covenant. So right there in the text, within a half a verse, it's talking about a covenant and it's talking about sacrifices and offerings. And we got to remember, too, that what did Antiochus Epiphanes do? So in my article, I showed all the similarities or many similarities between Antiochus and the future Antichrist. Well, one of the things that Antiochus did is he raged against the covenant, but he also tried to change it. He tried to change the covenant and have it not be followed and have other, like a pig offering. And so what do you see? Daniel 7:25. It speaks about the future Antichrist wanting to change the law. It says that the times and the seasons and to change the law. It's not laws in general like the laws of the world. It's talking about the law, the Mosaic law. So he's going to come in, and as he allows it for 3.5 years, and then he comes in and he wants to change it. Why? He wants to change it to worship him. This is 2 Thessalonians 2:4. I find it extremely fascinating that if we just follow the pattern of Antiochus, and we follow the pattern of the future Antichrist, and we put the Mosaic covenant at the center, it was in the center of both. and it fits very, very nicely.
That does fit nicely. I really like that. And the next thing I was going to mention to you is changing the times and the seasons. Times and seasons don't mean much of anything to Gentiles like it does to Israel with the feasts, the times, exact times that God ordained for this or that. That doesn't make sense from a Gentile standpoint, but it really does make sense from a Jewish point of view. Also, confirm this covenant, make it strong. Isn't that the meaning of confirm, to make it, to strengthen something?
Yeah, so what I did in there too was this particular Hebrew verb appears only twice in the whole Bible, and this is what's caused kind of some challenges for interpretation, because we're like, well, what does this verb really mean? It's in a hifil, which is very specific grammar, where it's a causative. This is why some translations, not all of them, will say confirm. Some just say make. So you can't really build too much. But what I did, and what scholars would do, is they'll say, well, okay, let's look at the only other place, which is Psalm 12. And there, if you look at it in the translations, it says prevail. It will cause to prevail. It will cause to be, which it is another way. You can say confirm, where this covenant is in a weakened point, but it's strengthened. It's brought to a point of prevailing or overcoming or being confirmed or being pervasive. So right now, when you go to Israel, to the chagrin of Orthodox Jews, nobody's following Moses. Nobody's following the Mosaic law. It's weak. It's not around. I mean, you might have some Shabbat laws, transportation on Saturdays, but most of them is not followed at all, especially in Tel Aviv, some of the more secular places. But when he comes on the scene, he is going to cause the Mosaic law to be the law of the land. He's going to cause it to prevail. He's going to confirm it. He's going to strengthen it to where then it gets permeated, which is one of the things I discuss as well, is this is what the religious Jews are waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're waiting for this, for this guy they're waiting for a guy, the Mashiach, the Messiah. They specifically say when he comes, he will cause the Mosaic law to be followed by everybody. It's like, bingo, here we go.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I want to study this further. And it's funny, when you do go to Israel and it's Shabbat, you know, when you're in an elevator, it stops by itself. You can't push the buttons because that's work. And so it only stops at certain floors. And to me, the first time I went, I thought, well, this is an interesting way to observe Shabbat. There's something about that just made me scratch my head. What is it about the elevators in the hotels? But today, you know, Israel is not that theocratic nation with the sacrificial system. And the church stumbles all over this, Mondo, head over feet, in concluding that therefore, in their thinking, 1948 is not the fulfillment of prophecy, because they expected, I don't know what they expected, instant redemption, a temple to be built immediately. So that's interesting. They are trying to work it backwards in the wrong way. But to me, what you're saying makes perfect sense. They are gathered in belief. The Bible clearly says that's going to be the case. And so now this fake Messiah is going to come and give them what they think they want. So the setup of this, I think, is very interesting. Do you have any last thoughts on that? I do want to get one more subject in today, if we can even touch on it. But any further thoughts on this covenant / peace treaty? ?
Yeah, I think that the last thing I would say is that as we get to the fall next month, people are talking about this peace agreement stuff, and then of course they're starting to say Trump's the Antichrist. They say, listen, if you understand the text correctly, this idea of Trump and this supposed peace treaty, it's just going to fall by the wayside. It's going to have no prophetic value in the sense directly related to Daniel 9:27.
Yeah, agreed. So a lot of food for thought there. The article is Daniel 9:27 a peace agreement or something else? And it's from August 10th. And I highly recommend, because, of course, you have thought this through. It's lengthy, but we have to do that in order to, find out if what we thought we knew